From the 11 Alive studios, this is The Georgia Vote with Faith Jesse and Zach Merchant.
Well, good Sunday morning and welcome in. We will get to our one-on-one interview with Geoff Duncan, Democratic candidate for governor, in just a minute. But we begin with the latest on the federal government shutdown.
That's right. Both Republicans and Democrats, they are certainly digging in. And the major sticking point here when it comes to passing a short-term funding bill is health care. So Democrats, they want Republicans to reverse the Medicaid cuts from President Trump's mega bill and then extend those Obamacare tax credits to make some health insurance premiums more affordable. Now, Republicans, they say that they can discuss health care policy later, but they want to fund the government at the current levels, at least for now. All week, we have heard a lot of back and forth from those who represent Georgia in Congress.
So I have been very clear. I cannot and I will not support a budget that allows for catastrophic cuts to health care. And that's what the Senate Republican budget does. And I will be voting no on that budget.
The math is the math, and this Republican shutdown lies squarely at the feet of who is in charge. Republicans have a majority in the House, the Senate, and the presidency. This falls on them.
But a CR by design is a prior agreed budget that they should be agreeing to because it's already a compromise built in. They don't have leverage. They're in the minority in the House, the Senate. They don't have the presidency, and they're already getting their spending levels. This is not a good faith deal that they're trying to go for.
Chuck Schumer, John Ossoff, and the Democrats voted against the 7-week clean CR that Republicans, including myself, in the House passed.
The Senate is back on Monday to try for a fifth time to pass a funding bill.
Now on to the 2026 campaign in Georgia. Geoff Duncan spent most of his political life as a Republican, rising to become lieutenant governor from 2019 to 2023. But he began publicly drifting from the party after conservatives, including President Donald Trump, challenged the results of Georgia's 2020 presidential election. Last year, Duncan spoke at the Democratic National Convention and he endorsed Kamala Harris for president. Now he is running for governor as a Democrat. This week I asked him about his past record as a Republican and how he plans to navigate a primary in a brand new party. How do you convince Democratic voters that you are the right candidate for them?
I think the simple answer is that I'm going to stay focused on the issues that they care about. I'm going to avoid the national headlines. I'm going to ignore the partisan fistfight. I think they are worried about affordability. They are worried about health care. They are worried about Donald Trump taking over their schools, their streets, their state's budget, because that's really the argument to make here. If a Democrat doesn't win for the first time in 30 years, and yes, it's been almost 30 years since a Democrat has won the governor's office, then we'll essentially be handing the keys to Donald Trump. And for me, I show up maybe not as the perfect Democrat, but certainly one that is most electable, because I've got the opportunity to bring Democrats, independents, and disgusted Republicans to vote for us in 2026 in November.
Back in May of 2019, you posted on your Facebook page, you said, this is a quote, "The 2020 election will be the most important election of our lifetime. The Democrats will stop at nothing to destroy our president, our party, and the values we stand for. They want to move our country towards socialism." That doesn't sound like a Democratic candidate.
Yeah, I fell victim to campaign rhetoric, and I was wrong. To hear those phrases is jarring to me.
Are you disappointed that you said that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely I am. And not just for campaign purposes, but because of the core inside of me realizes that that's not the direction forward for this state. And so for me, look, I've got to earn the trust of millions of Democrats. We're working right now to travel to every corner of the state. I've already won a statewide race once. I know it takes a ton of effort. It takes grassroots. It takes fundraising. It takes messaging. It's a cumulative effort. It's a 14-month sprint.
You supported the so-called heartbeat bill here in Georgia. It bans most abortions after about 6 weeks of pregnancy. Do you still support that?
I got the issue of abortion wrong, and I'm able to admit that. I was wrong to think a room full of legislators knew better than millions of women. After taking the time to listen to the heartfelt stories, the difficult medical situations, the personal situations, I believe women deserve the right to choose. And as governor, I'll do two things on day one. I'll sign an executive order that clarifies that doctors can practice medicine without the fear of prosecution. And two, introduce legislation that repeals the 6-week ban and returns us back to the Roe v. Wade environment.
I'd imagine there may be some Democratic voters who hear that and think, well, this is great, but why didn't you think that back when you were in office and had a chance to legislate at the time?
Yeah, I didn't get the issue right. I wasn't asking the right questions, and I certainly wasn't looking in the right places, and that was to women's opinion.
There are cynics in American politics who say the era of being able to persuade people is diminishing in some ways. People are more hardened in their views. Do you believe that, or do you think there is always an ability as a politician, as a leader, to convince people that you're right through your words?
I think the best way to convince people is by leading by example. And to me, that's the vacuum that we see all across America. We see politicians that are really good at winning elections but not following through and doing what they know is right. Doing the right thing is sometimes saying you're wrong. There's other issues I didn't get right. I didn't get the gun issue right. I look through the lens of a father of 3 kids, and I watch these school shootings, I watch these mass shootings, I watch these issues fly up where if we just would have been with 90% of Americans and believed in universal background checks and red flag laws, we'd be in a better position. As governor of Georgia, I anticipate all of the support that I'll try to garner to push for universal background checks, to push for red flag laws.
Let's talk about that for a moment, though, because you say as a parent you saw the news of these school shootings and it changed your view on guns and restrictions on access to firearms. But back in 2018, you posted on your Facebook page touting an A rating from the NRA. There were surely school shootings before 2018. Why didn't they change your mind earlier?
Yeah, I was wrong to think the NRA had anybody's best interest in mind. They don't. They simply have their own. They're a fear-mongering organization that puts pressure on legislators to think that they're going to drum up primary opposition for them. We shouldn't be making gun policies in Georgia based on that. We should be creating gun safety laws that make sense in a majority of Georgians' households.
And that is just a part of our conversation. You can watch our full interview streaming right now on 11 Live Plus.
Time now for our Politics Roundtable. Today we have Mark Roundtree, Republican strategist and pollster. He's also the founder of Landmark Communications and a veteran of Georgia campaigns and elections. Democratic strategist Howard Franklin. He's worked on campaigns throughout the Southeast, including the 2021 campaign for Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens. He now leads consulting firm Ohio River South. And returning this morning, Chauncey Alcorn, state and local politics reporter at Capital B Atlanta. The big question here is, can he convince Democrats in a primary that he's the guy for the job? You asked him that question. Howard, I'm going to ask you that question.
I appreciate the question. I don't think that his answers to Zach were especially convincing, but I think also, and this is a difficult conversation to have, but I think at this point in the race, you got to be aware that almost none of the frontrunners, perceived frontrunners, 2002, Roy Barnes, 2010, not Nathan Deal, but then Karen Handel or John Oxendine, 2018, Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle, but not eventual Governor Brian Kemp. It's so hard to know. Almost every frontrunner that we've anointed or who's been perceived as a frontrunner has lost this race in the last generation.
Is there a frontrunner right now, though?
I think that there are perceived frontrunners. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and polling, some of which was revealed via news outlets, et cetera, last week, would suggest who those frontrunners are by money and by name recognition. And the last 25 years have not elected any of them.
You talk about that polling. There was some released by former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms' campaign that showed her with 38% support of Democratic voters. It showed Geoff Duncan in third place in that poll with 9% of support. 36% of respondents said they were undecided. Mark, you're a Republican strategist, but you look at those numbers, you look at somebody like Geoff Duncan in this race. What is his path through a Democratic primary?
Well, his path is he has one singular argument to make in his favor, and that is he would be the most, from his point of view, the most electable general election candidate for the Democrats. But I think he's going to have a lot of problems answering one particular question. This is the first person you ever vote for as a Democrat is going to be for yourself. Is that true or false? And it's going to be true. It's going to be very hard, I think, for him to convince. Primaries, both Republican and Democrat, are ideological creatures. Those are people that vote based on policy. They're much more adept. They're much more aware of politics in Georgia. They're going to be very aware that he has been against them on virtually every issue, if not literally every issue brought before the legislature. So it's going to be very hard for him to win in a Democratic primary. 62% of the voters in a Democratic primary are African American. 62% of those are also female. And primaries, demographics do matter And it's going to be a very hard argument for him to make.
I think it's a question of will his argument appease to that Democratic base. Chauncey, I want to bring you in on this. Which voters do you think Duncan is most positioned to speak to? I know Mark talked about a couple of those voters.
Certainly, we've seen some in the suburbs of Atlanta and the perhaps college-educated white women voters and things of that nature. I would say that a lot of the concern that I would have for his candidacy lies along the same lines demographically. The last person switched parties in Georgia was Misha Maynor. Didn't go so well for her in the primary, and you're going to be looking at a lot of liberal, progressive voters in the Democratic primary, so it's going to be an uphill battle for him.
And it is a crowded Democratic primary field. This week, State Representative Rua Roman got into the race as well. Let's listen in a little bit of sound from her explaining why she is running.
Because right now our state has been ruled by Republicans for 20 years and hospitals have shut down. The minimum wage on our books is still $5.15 an hour, and our education system continues to rank lower. And so the best way to change that is to change who's in power.
Now, she has staked out through her time in the state legislature and through her nascent campaign here a progressive lane. Howard, does this shake up the Democratic primary at all?
I wouldn't go so far as to say it shakes up the Democratic primary. I would say both of these primaries, Republican and Democrat, are both full of compelling candidates, and they're going to have to figure out how to raise the requisite resource to communicate who they are. I think Rua is a relatively new entrant to Georgia politics writ large.
She's young, too, a young candidate.
She's young. She's only been elected for a couple years. And Georgia, as I often say on this program, is the 8th largest state by population, one of the most expensive media markets in the country. It's not going to be easy to introduce yourself if you haven't done so before.
And here's the thing. I know that some people see her as a progressive candidate, but when you look on her website, she's calling for raising the minimum wage, reopening hospitals, limiting corporate ownership. I mean, these are some things that could also appeal to a moderate voter, Mark.
Yeah, actually, some of her arguments, whether you support her or not on the policies themselves as to how you get there, some of the things she's raising are genuine issues that are affecting Georgians, particularly in rural areas with hospitals, for example. Yeah. She is a great example of maybe younger Democratic primary voters, and she is a great example of why I think it'd be very hard for maybe a more moneyed candidate like Geoff Duncan to get out of a runoff. I find it very hard to believe that someone like Roman would support a Duncan in a runoff.
And Mark, Chauncey, I'm so sorry, we'll bring you in just after the break. We're getting the wrap from the producers here. We will be back with much more from the panel just after this. Welcome back. This week, state lawmakers grilled an official who runs a nonprofit that says it helps secure Georgia's voter rolls.
That's right. Some of the questions echoed complaints about the 2020 election. As Doug Richards reports, there's a core of lawmakers who want to point fingers at an entity called ERIC.
After Donald Trump lost the 2020 election, 9 red states bolted from ERIC, a nonprofit that helps states maintain secure voter lists.
When the 9 states left in 2023, what was the policy divide that caused them to leave?
I think that politics got in the way of policy, frankly.
Shane Hamlin told lawmakers that the Electronic Registration Information Center, known as ERIC, allows states to easily share secure data about voters who relocate from state to state.
Obviously, I was the author of the bill for us to leave ERIC, and that was brought to me by constituent efforts.
Georgia stuck with ERIC after 2020, in spite of skeptics like Representative Martin Momtahan of Dallas, who grilled Hamlin about ERIC's data security.
The Alabama Secretary of State had taken a visit to ERIC's headquarters and found it to be an empty shell. What can you tell me about that?
We have a mailing address in D.C. Of course, we don't have data servers in an office in an unsecured location in downtown D.C.
Hamlin says ERIC's data servers are in an undisclosed location in the Midwest. A Democrat on the panel commended ERIC.
Has ERIC data ever been leaked?
No.
I'm not aware of any other process that has more security than the ERIC program.
Doug Richards with the 11 Alive political team reporting there. Now, Representative Momtahan's bill to pull Georgia out of ERIC, it made it out of a committee this past legislative session, but it did not get a vote in either chamber. Now, Georgia voters' next chance to cast their ballot is 4 weeks from Tuesday. And this week, I will be part of the Atlanta Press Club Louder Milk Young debate series. I'll moderate the Atlanta mayoral debate. You can stream it on October 10th on atlantapressclub.org. We did not get to talk about the shutdown at the beginning of the show. So, Chauncey, I want to bring you in here. Looking at the politics behind it, some similarities as to another shutdown we saw in 2018. The president had trifecta control of the government then, still resulted in a shutdown. How did we get here this year?
I mean, basically, you have roughly 111,000 federal workers that could be furloughed or have their paychecks reduced as a result of this shutdown. Coming into this, Democrats basically got a lot of backlash for capitulating Chuck Schumer in the Senate last time, and they basically said, we're not going to do it this time. There was disputes over funding for Medicaid and other entitlement programs, and they wanted to do a continuing resolution. And the Democrats basically said, no, and they're going to stick it to the Republicans and say, you guys are in charge of the government. And they are betting that the voters are going to blame the Republicans over this.
Howard, for Georgia Democrats right now, where do things stand for them strategically?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think we are still looking for smoke signals or direction from what's happening in D.C. I think it is worth noting that, to the point you guys made, and Chauncey, you also made eloquently, the previous shutdown, I think, is a little bit different. I think DOJ and really kind of the president's sort of very single-minded sort of control of the federal government apparatus will make it much more difficult to sell the idea that Democrats are at fault here. I mean, for those of us and for those of your viewers who are following really closely, they'll say, hey, we realize maybe we need 60 votes for a budget resolution in the Senate. But most folks will say Donald Trump won the elections, right? He has taken control not only from the federal government as an apparatus, but also from Congress. So you break it, you bought it. And I think that Democrats will have some success pinning the responsibility of the shutdown on the president.
Now, Mark, let me ask you this, because some people say, Republicans are saying, hey, let's do this, let's open it up, we'll talk about it later. Some people are saying, you're gaslighting here. Is that what's happening, or do you think people will really actually come to the table? Because we're talking about medical care, health care. More than just Democrats need health care expansions.
In the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, even 10 years ago, this might have been an easier thing to come together, but primaries are, there are very few people that are coming out of primaries that are not ideologically liberal or conservative these days. Chuck Schumer very well may be primaried by AOC in his own primary in New York. So I think that makes it a lot harder for people to come together to put together a budget now. Traditionally, Republicans have usually taken the political hit on these shutdowns because they're the party, essentially the party of no.
As we saw in 2019.
Essentially, they want to reduce the size of government theoretically. But I don't know that that's happening right now. I think the way this is playing out right now is it seems to be, I think, a little more in the Republicans' favor, that the Democrats are appearing to be intransigent and the Republicans are getting all but one of their members to pass continuing resolutions. So,
I think it depends on how you look at that, though. Because
yeah,
some Democrats would
definitely
say it's the Republicans pushing back and not listening to us.
And as a side note, we do at Landmark, we do a lot of polling, not on a lot of campaigns and a lot of issues. And one of the things that I have noticed about how a lot of the media defines the issues of the shutdown is they always ask the question, who's to blame? That's always the question in the poll. And I think there are tens of millions of people that would rather look at it like, who gets the credit? It's the same thing. It just depends. It's this negative word that gets thrown out there. Who gets the blame?
A lot of the finger pointing.
And they need to ask who is responsible.
And on that note, Mark, we're just going to take a pause. If you're joining us, we will have an extended panel. You can find it on YouTube. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back. The Georgia National Fair is open for business. Governor Brian Kemp helped to open the 11-day event in Perry, that's just south of Macon.
The fair promotes agriculture in the state. The governor's speech dedicated the fair to America's 250th birthday. Plus, he supported Georgia farmers recovering after Hurricane Helene.
Sitting on my desk at the Capitol is a sign with the words, "Tough times don't last, but tough people do." Something Marty and I saw again and again in the days following the storm is that our state and those who call it home, and especially our Georgia farmers, are tough people.
Up next, our voice of the voter prefers to ride through Atlanta on horseback. What he wants city leaders to do about the great outdoors. Welcome back. This week, our voice of the voter takes us to South Fulton's Camp Creek, where we met up with Renew. You may see him riding his horse down Edgewood or on the Beltline. Well, he traded in life in the limelight for a ranch. And now he's urging city leaders to preserve and enhance Camp Creek. When you told me to come to Camp Creek, I was not expecting this.
Yeah, this is Camp Creek, right?
Right, this is Camp Creek,
right.
But I've only known Camp Creek Parkway.
So that's why they named Camp Creek, because the creek is following.
Because the creek is following.
Step up. Step up.
Brenu, you're originally from Brooklyn, but you've been in Atlanta since the early 2000s.
Yep.
Went from the music industry to horses. How did that happen?
I think it was just divinely, because I was introduced to horses when I grew up in Brooklyn. And I was also introduced to music. I worked with Jaquan, Da Brat, Akon. Those are the three major artists that I toured with. When I was on tour with Jaquan, so we went to Tijuana, I saw this guy, you know. He had all these horses tied to a string on the sand, kind of like this. It clicked. And I was like my reality of what my life was and where my heart was at. It got life. My heart started beating again because I'm like, I forgot I love horses. You're gonna lift upper body strength, step into the stirrup, throw your right leg behind, boom. Look above the horse head. Good.
We're moving, okay.
Pull right, don't bend the elbow, keep it good. Perfect.
We're going to Bar Taco. Do you think a lot of other people in the city would come here and also find peace, especially like young boys, like how you were when you discovered horses with your grandpa?
Yeah, I definitely think they would. If it's in their heart, I think this would balance them out. You could still go hang out, go to the Battery, and you may say, man, I just need some nature, but I don't have the money to hop on a plane, get a hotel. Let's go over to Brenu and go to the brook.
What's your biggest concern right now?
Only concern I would say, I think about every day, is that I really want to have my existence and what I've been through to be something that would be remembered and validated and respected when I'm physically not here.
The concern is to make sure that this is preserved.
To balance
Not
out.
developers moving in, building buildings. You just want this to
stay conserved. It's already here. Nature has already planted itself here. So we already developed around it. Do we want it to just keep taking? Like, let this be.
What are you most optimistic about and hopeful for, especially when it comes to our politics or nature or both?
I know politicians and people that have in high positions. I know they take nice trips to places that look like this. Without this, we can't survive. Us, animals, without nature, we can't survive. I feel that I just got to get the right person in Fulton County and the right person in South Fulton that can say, yes, it's very important.
That was a lot of fun. Big thanks to Brenu for that.
And thank you all for being with us. We will see you right back here again next Sunday at 11 for another edition of the Georgia Vote.